Welcome students to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. K.S. Nagaraja of Deccan College, Pune. I am teaching the course of Historical Linguistics. In today's module, we discuss the third important language family of India known as Austroasiatic language family. So far, the other two families which we have discussed, the Indo-Aryan and Dravidian, we'll have noticed that many languages are official languages of the various states of India and having writing systems of their own and having quite a significant literature as well. However, in this particular module, that is the Austroasiatic language family, as well as in the next one which we are going to discuss, Tibeto-Burman family, all the languages are virtually minority communities living in obscure areas of hills and forests, never coming into mainstreams, as it were. So no literature available, no writing systems employed to write those languages. So only recently they have come into limelight in the last 50 years or 100 years. So in this module, we look at the Austroasiatic family in some details, as it is an important family. There are many questions in this. We'll study some of them and see how far we can go. It's normally assumed that the Austroasiatic language family is not only important for the subcontinent, but also probably they are the native people of this subcontinent. If Dravidians and Indo-Aryans came from outside into the subcontinent, the natural question is whether this subcontinent was an empty land or was populated by other communities. If you don't accept the first hypothesis, then naturally the other hypothesis leads the possibility that there were other communities living there, and maybe at least in central and eastern India, the people who are now known as Austroasiatic probably lived there. So that way, this is an important family from history point of view, and the knowledge of it at present is not really enough. But then when you look at the languages belonging to this family, we see that there are more than 150 languages, and these languages are normally classified into two major subgroups. One is the Munda languages. In fact, the Munda languages are exclusively found in our country. And the second one is the Mon Khmer sub-branch. In Mon Khmer sub-branch, we have two languages, Khasi and Nicobarese. Nicobarese sometimes treated separately also. These are the two languages belonging to Mon Khmer sub-branch spoken in India. All the other languages, more than 100 in number, are spoken in Southeast Asia, stretching from Burma, or now the present day Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnamese, even partly Malaysia as well. The Austroasiatic languages are thought to have been spoken throughout the Indian subcontinent by hunter-gatherers who were later assimilated first by the agriculturalist Dravidian settlers and later by the Indo-Aryan people arriving from northwestern India. At one time, the Austroasiatic domain probably extended unbroken from China to India to Malaysia, but invasion by speakers of other languages split the Austroasiatic community and divided it into enclaves. The Dravidians and Indo-Aryans entered India and certainly overran much of the Munda territory doubtless reducing the Austroasiatic population and certainly leaving the Munda languages scattered in small groups. The Tibeto-Burmans and Thais invaded Indochina and split the Austroasiatic domain in two. The Chams and Malays invaded Vietnam and Malaysia respectively. The Chinese occupied northern Vietnam for nearly a millennium, and an Indian aristocracy apparently ruled parts of modern Cambodia and Thailand for some time. As a result of such incursions, few nation-states ever developed in the Austroasiatic domain. The Khmer, Mon, and Vietnamese empires being the exceptions, and most of the Austroasiatic speakers have lived and still live in small tribal communities, groups. All of these events had an impact on the Austroasiatic languages, and for that reason, these languages exhibit an uncommon diversity that makes tracing their diachronic development extremely difficult. The Munda family has been influenced by a synthesizing non-tonal Indian Sprachband, the Mon Khmer by an isolating tonal Sinitic Sprachband. In short, the two Austroasiatic subfamilies have been pulled apart and consequently have evolved in different directions, which makes reconstructing their original phonology and grammar a real challenge for historical linguists. Due to such difficulties and the inaccessibility of many of the tribal groups, Austroasiatic studies have not proceeded apace with those of neighboring language families. Comparatively speaking, little historical work has been done, and the proto-language of the family, the subfamilies, and most of the branches remain to be reconstructed properly. The speakers of Munda sub-branch are considered to be one of the oldest groups living in this subcontinent. Though there are no literary texts in any of these languages, as no language was put to writing ever, the Austroasiatic domain probably extended unbroken from China to India to Malaysia, but invasion by speakers of other languages split the Austroasiatic community and divided into enclaves. The Dravidian and Indo-Aryan entered India certainly overran much of the Munda territory. The date and place of the origin of Austroasiatic is still unknown. The place was probably southern or southeastern China. The date was at least circa 2000 to 2500 BC and possibly much earlier. From that location, Austroasiatic speakers might have moved south into the Indochina Peninsula and west into India. Their southernmost expansion was the Nicobar Islands and the southern tip of Malaysia. Some may have penetrated Sumatra and other islands, but this is uncertain. Their westernmost expansion is unknown, but some argue that it extended into modern Pakistan. Austroasiatic languages have a disjunct distribution across India and other countries, as mentioned earlier. According to a scholar Sidwell and also a scholar Blank, according to their report 2011, they appear to be the autochthonous languages of Southeast Asia, or in other words, native languages of Southeast Asia. Genetic studies of representatives from all branches of Austroasiatic indicate the ancestors of Austroasiatic speakers originated in present-day India and migrated into Southeast Asia from the Brahmaputra river valley. The Austroasiatic language family is considered to be one of the oldest families of this region. Khmer, Mon, Vietnamese are culturally the most important and have the longest recorded history. Among these languages, only Vietnamese, Khmer and Mon have a long recorded history, and only Vietnamese and Khmer have official status in Vietnam and Cambodia respectively. The rest of the languages are spoken by non-urban minority groups, written, if at all, only recently. The family is of great importance as a linguistic substratum for all Southeast Asian languages. Superficially, there seems to be little in common between a monosyllabic tone language such as Vietnamese and a polysyllabic toneless Munda language such as Mundari or Santali of India. A very recent study, however, confirms the unifying unity of the family. The date of separation of the three main Austroasiatic subfamilies, Munda, Nicobarese, Mon Khmer, have never been estimated and must be placed well back in prehistory. Within the Mon Khmer subfamily itself, 12 main branches are distinguished. Glottochronological estimates of the time during which specific languages have evolved separately from a common source indicate that these 12 branches all separated about 3000 to 4000 years back. Relationships with other language families like Austronesian have been proposed, but because of the long durations involved and the scarcity of reliable data, it is very difficult to present a solid demonstration of their validity. Though there are no written texts in any of the Munda languages, as no language of the group was put to writing at any time of the history, oblique references to Munda languages can be found in the literary texts of Indo-Aryan languages. In ancient literature of India, some of these people were referred to as Nishada, Kolla, Billa, Pulinda or Pulindra, Kirata, Shabara, etc. For instance, the Kirata people of the Vedic texts must be the present Khadiya people. Shabara people mentioned in Aitareya Brahmana and other early Sanskrit texts must be the present Sora people. The Khadiya and Juang consider themselves to be sections of the Shabara people of olden times. The Juang women used leaves as their garments until recently, for which reason they are also known as Patua. In this country, most of these people are found in midst of forests and mountains of central and eastern India and in Nicobar group of islands. Only during the last 2 centuries, a better understanding of these people has become possible. In the early 19th century, a beginning was made with the attempts of Hodgson and Max Muller. Hodgson, 1848-1858, hinted that there were actually 3 groups of languages in India: the Himalayan, Indo-Aryan, and Tamulian. The last one included both the Dravidian and the Kol or the Ostrich groups of languages. In 1854, Max Muller separated the Dravidian from Kol or Ostrich and referred to these people as Munda for the first time. In due course of time, this term was accepted to refer to these people as a group as such, and it continues to this day also. So, as I have already mentioned, these languages are classified into 2 major sub-branches, but I should say that the credit goes to a scholar known as Schmidt, William Schmidt, who first proposed this kind of comparison. In fact, he was responsible for identification of this family as separate from a closely termed family Austronesian family. So in fact, he showed that Austroasiatic and Austronesian are different. So he was the first scholar to declare in 1906 that a family of this type exists. And later scholars like Pinot and others were responsible in establishing this family on a firm footing. In fact, in the initial stages, scholars, even Schmidt, for instance, included other languages like Malay, Sakai, and other, which are now clearly known as non-Austroasiatic. So there is some development in the sense that some scholars who are interested in these languages have worked quite arduously to prove that the family as such emerges separately and identifies itself. So Austroasiatic is a separate family. Regarding subclassification within Austroasiatic, there have been several controversies. Schmidt, who first attempted a systematic comparison, included in Austroasiatic a mixed group of languages containing Malay borrowings and did not consider Vietnamese to be a member of the family. As for Munda and Vietnamese, the recent works of the German linguist Hans Zergen Pinot on Khadia and of the French linguist André Haudricourt on Vietnamese tones have shown that both language groups are Austroasiatic. The primary split of Austroasiatic is between the Mon Khmer and Munda families. The former are far more differentiated. Mon Khmer comprises well over 100 languages. The mid-level subclassification of the family into some 12 branches is clear. There are uncertainties in the assignment of several of these branches to certain higher level divisions. The Munda family is smaller and is located in eastern India, primarily in the states of Bengal, Orissa, Jharkhand, Bihar, eastern MP, that is Chhattisgarh, northern Maharashtra, and Andhra Pradesh. It is divided normally into North and South Munda, which are quite different from each other. The North Munda languages are fairly closely related in two branches, Korku on one side and Kherwarian on the other. The term Kherwarian normally includes languages like Santali, Mundari, Ho, and others. The South Munda subfamily consists of Khadia Juang, which are spoken almost in what may be called Central Munda area, and Koraput Munda. The latter branches into Gutobremu Gata and Sora Jurai Gorum. There are about 9 million speakers of Munda languages. The most majority are of the North Munda group. It is difficult to think of more different linguistic types than those represented by Munda and Mon Khmer. For this reason, some linguists have questioned their genetic relationship. Yet, there are several common or reconstructed features which probably go back to Proto-Austroasiatic. With the efforts of William Schmidt in the early 20th century, the language groups now identified as Austroasiatic and Austronesian came to be recognized. It was in 1906 for the first time Wilhelm Schmidt, the real discoverer of the Austroasiatic family, propounded the Austic theory. Schmidt's articles for the first time supported the Austroasiatic hypothesis with lexical, phonological, and morphological evidence. They remain until today the basic works of Austroasiatic studies. Schmidt grouped the Munda languages into three subgroups on the basis of the distribution of Ka and Ha from what may be called the reconstructed Proto-Munda Ka into the following. One, an eastern group that was Kherwari with her, a western group like languages like Kurku, Khadiya, Zhuang with Ka, and three, a mixed group, southeastern Mundari with a loss of Proto-Munda Ka. As this classification was based on a single argument, it could not do justice to the facts. Grierson has discussed Munda and Mon Khmer languages in 3 volumes of Linguistic Survey of India, namely Volume 1, Introduction, Volume 2, and Volume 4. Later, Pinot, in 1959, through his extensive studies on Munda languages, showed that the verbal inflection of all Munda languages is traceable to a Proto-Munda inflectional system, which was later expanded in the north and considerably reduced in the south. From this evidence, and on the basis of lexical differences, the Munda languages were classified into a northern group with the subgroups of Kwarku and Kherwari, and a southern group which is further subdivided into a central group including Khadiya, Zhuang, and a southeastern group including Sora, Pareng, Gutob, and Remo. The relation of Kherwari and Kwarku is much closer than that of central and southeastern Munda, which must have been separated much earlier than Kherwari and Kwarku. This classification of Pinot was adopted with slight modifications by the later scholars like Norman Zaid and David Stamp. Later, Bhattacharya in 1975, through his extensive work on Munda languages, provided a fresh classification based on his own work. He identified 10 independent Munda languages and 6 important dialects. These languages are grouped into 2 branches and subgrouped further. Bhattacharya showed that there are many major differences between what he called Upper Munda languages and what is called Lower Munda languages. Firstly, the absence of the pronominal object marker in verb stems in Lower Munda as versus its presence in Upper Munda. This is the main distinguishing feature according to him. Secondly, the languages of Lower Munda have a na suffix for genitive marker, where all the Upper Munda languages have an a. Thirdly, in combination with kinship terms of words for parts of the body, the pronominal elements of the first and second persons are usually prefixed in Lower Munda but suffixed in Upper Munda. Also, in the formation of non-singular numbers, Lower Munda differs from Upper Munda. However, alternative terminologies are provided in the headings themselves wherever possible. Now, a comparative picture is given of the languages, particularly of the Munda subgroup, based on the census of India. So here, the languages are listed with the geographical location and the population. We have the Bhumij language, for instance, spoken in basically in borders of Orissa and Andhra Pradesh. The population as for 2001 is supposed to be 47,000 only. The other languages are Bondo or Remo with just around 3,000 spoken in Orissa, highly endangered language. Then Gutob, spoken in basically in Orissa and Andhra Pradesh, are supposed to have only 26,000. The other important languages are Ho, Zhuang, Khadiya, Koda, Kwarku, Gata, Kwarwa, Mundari, also unclassified Munda, Parengi or Gorum, and we have Santali, which is the most important language because of the population. It has more than 6 million speakers. Then we have Sora, Nicobarese, and Khasi. Khasi also has more than 1.2 million speakers, similarly Mundari too. The above comparative demographic table is in fact incomplete, though it gives a very interesting picture. The table has been made fuller by adding those languages having lesser than 10,000 speakers like Bonda or Bondo, Parengi, Didai. Also, the exact number of speakers for Gutob and Sora are not known, as Census of India provides single entries for them, including both Dravidian and Munda varieties. Further, the language called Munda, listed in census listed above, is a misnomer, still listed as if it is a separate language. Naturally, there have been various attempts to relate these languages, the Austroasiatic languages, with other families of the area like Dravidian, Indo-Aryan, or Thai Kadai, or Chinese, Tibeto-Burman, but so far they have not been able to prove any such relationships. Therefore, it is assumed that Austroasiatic family is a separate family similar to Dravidian Indo-Aryan, but without any connections as such. And also, most of the Austroasiatic languages, particularly in Southeast Asia, have not been studied so far. Therefore, again, this is a problem. Lack of information, lack of clear data hampers this kind of historical comparative work relating people with the area. To summarize then, Austroasiatic languages hold a key to the unresolved issue of who are the native people of the subcontinent. When all these languages are studied systematically, and then only we will be able to get some new inkling into that particular issue. Unfortunately, none of these languages, Santali, Mundari, Khadiya, etc., have any literature. So that hampers the comparative study. And another important point, in fact, which will be expanded in the next module, is from the characteristic point of view that these languages are in a way unique. So because of that, comparative studies have not flourished much. There are many good works available in on these languages. They can be looked at both in the print version as well as in the e-version. Thank you.